So let's write the code in our backend necessary to delete a movie. So I'm looking at the movies-db.go file, and at this point in the course, this should be really straightforward for you. I'll create a new function, and this will be our database function, so it takes the appropriate receiver, and I'll call it delete movie. And it will take one parameter, ID, of type int, and it'll return potentially an error. And I'll get my context code just by copying and pasting this because it's ever so much faster. And paste it in here. And I'll write my query. So my statement will be, and it's very straightforward, delete from movies where ID equals $1. And let's just scroll up a bit. And now we'll do the actual call to our database driver. m.db.exec context, and we're going to hand it the context and our statement, and it takes one parameter, ID. And we'll check for an error. If error is not equal to nil, just return the error. Otherwise, return nil. Now let's go to our handlers. And I believe we already have a stub. Yes, we have a stub delete movie. So here we want to get the ID from the URL, so we'll do the same thing we did before. Params is a variable that comes from HTTP router, and we're going to call params from context, and we'll hand it the context, r.context. Then we get our ID and check for an error by calling strconv a2i, and we want to get params by name, and we're looking for ID, and we'll have to get that in the URL when we set the root up in a minute. We'll check for an error, and I'll just copy and paste this code. And if there is no error, then we check for an error again, and error is equal this time to app.models.db.delete movie, right there, and we hand it ID. And we paste in our error check. Otherwise, we can just define a simple OK, is assign the value of JSON response, and give it an OK set to true. And we just write out our JSON file. Error equals app.writeJSON, and we hand it W and http.status OK. What we want to encode is JSON and wrap the whole thing in a response. And I paste in my error check. So there's our delete movie handler. Now let's go to our routes file and set up the necessary route. So I'll duplicate this one because that's a lot faster. This will be method get. There's no need to post this because we're getting everything we need from the URL. And we're calling delete movie. And we'll hand it the ID, and we pass it to the right handler, delete movie. All right, so that should compile. Let's make sure. Perfect. So our backend is now set up, at least enough to get things working. So in the next lesson, we'll go and hook our front end up to this point in our backend.